Warning, this content may contain spoilers for The Little Landlady. Hey everyone, Nightfireox here. Today I'm here to tell you about the time I read a manhwa that I should have dropped before its conclusion. My story starts out like all bad decisions do. You're impaired or not in your right senses. For me, I was extremely sick, stuck in bed, sniffling and scrolling through endless recommendations on Tapas. Yep, that is how I stumbled upon the worst romance manhwa I've ever read, also known as The Little Landlady. Okay, so you see, I really like stories about a fresh start or fixing past mistakes, and reincarnation stories are my favorite. Which is a good thing, I guess, because Korean manhwa has tons of these stories. With nothing else to do, I figured, why not? The Little Landlady had an intriguing premise. A young girl named Vivel, who wasn't only isekai'd after she died on her first day at work in her first life as an architect, but is then killed by a tyrant king who punishes all architects and their apprentices because of an architect that built secret tunnels in the original design of his castle that then allowed his fiancé to flee him. She is then reincarnated a second time with her past life memories, this time as the daughter of a nobleman. However, as the story went on, The Little Landlady just didn't deliver on its potential. As a huge fan of reincarnation stories, I'm always drawn to narratives that explore the concept in unique ways. The Little Landlady initially captivated me with Vivel's circumstances. Unlike many protagonists who retain memories or abilities from past lives, Vivel seemed to possess the full knowledge and skills of her past life as an architect. Imagine the potential for a character who could utilize this accumulated knowledge and experience to truly make a difference in the rebuilding of her kingdom. This resonated with me similarly to how stories like See You in My 19th Life explore the emotional weight of past lives and the challenges characters face in forming new connections while carrying the memories of the old. Vivel, with her multiple lives, could have offered a story rich with emotional depth and exploration of these same themes. Unlike typical stories, she returns to the very same kingdom where she died, a compelling twist brimming with potential. Imagine grappling with the memories of your past life while navigating the same land that facilitated your demise. This setup could have led to fascinating explorations like those found in From a Knight to a Lady, where the protagonist confronts her own biases and identity within the enemy nation. In a world saturated with reincarnation stories, The Little Landlady promised something truly unique, the chance to delve into Vivel's past life, see their impact on her present, and ultimately fulfill her dream of becoming an architect. Sure, how she dies the second time around is a little silly, but hey, tyrants throughout history haven't exactly been known for their logical decision-making skills. While The Little Landlady falls short in some areas, its initial premise held promise. It reminded me of another manhwa I enjoy, I Shall Master This Family. Both stories feature young female leads facing adversity. In I Shall Master This Family, Florencia uses her knowledge from her past life to strategically navigate the political landscape and rebuild her family's legacy. This focus on agency and resourcefulness is something The Little Landlady could have benefited from. Imagine Vivel, with her accumulated knowledge from past lives, strategically using her skills as an architect to not only rebuild structures, but also influence the kingdom's political and economic landscape. The story also introduced a seemingly supportive father figure for Vivel. This element hinted at a rich character backstory and the potential for a heartwarming family dynamic. Unfortunately, this aspect wasn't fully explored. Vivel's interactions with her father figure remained underdeveloped, leaving a gap in her emotional journey. Despite this, Vivel herself initially came across as a strong and dependable protagonist. Her intelligence and maturity, despite her young age, were qualities that made me root for her from the start. However, as the story progressed, these strengths weren't always utilized to their full potential. The art style in The Little Landlady is undeniably cute and visually appealing, and the seemingly likable characters created a very charming and inviting initial impression. However, as the story unfolded, this initial charm began to fade. Several key areas, including Vivel's development, the world building, and the narrative direction, ultimately left me feeling disappointed. Let's delve into these issues and explore why The Little Landlady failed to live up to its initial promise. The first major misstep in The Little Landlady surrounds Vivel's character development. Remember how excited I was about her possessing the knowledge and skills from multiple lives? This concept held immense potential for growth, accumulated experience, and a deeper understanding of the world. Unfortunately, the story failed to capitalize on this. Unlike stories like I Shall Master This Family, which excel at showcasing character growth, Vivel remained stagnant throughout The Little Landlady. In I Shall Master This Family, the protagonist Florentia, despite regressing in time, embarks on a clear journey of growth. We witness her confront her past mistakes, learn from her experiences, and transform into a stronger, more capable individual. For example, a large portion of the story follows her meticulous planning and strategic maneuvering to take control of her family's legacy. Each challenge shapes her character and those around her. Unfortunately, Vivelle's lack of development extends beyond her stagnant personality. The story also fails to create a sense of genuine challenge or high stakes for the protagonist. She's the protagonist after all, and this is a story, so things inevitably happen and she overcomes them. However, these obstacles are often easily surmounted without any real struggle. This predictability diminishes the tension and makes it difficult to feel invested in Vivelle's journey. What would it have been like if the story had explored the consequences of her past life as an architect? Perhaps knowledge of a secret passage from her second life could have been used to strategically navigate a dangerous situation, or maybe her architectural skills from a previous life could have been used to outwit an antagonist who was exploiting a weakness in the kingdom's infrastructure. These are just a few examples of how the story could have incorporated challenges that forced Vivelle to utilize her unique experiences and knowledge. Imagine living through multiple lives, accumulating a wealth of wisdom and emotional baggage, only to have none of it truly explored. Sure, the story occasionally throws in glimpses of her past, but they lack any real depth. The fascinating aspect, which could have served as a powerful tool for character development and reader connection, is ultimately squandered. It becomes a mere plot device to initially grab the audience's attention before being relegated to the background. Stories like I Shall Master This Family demonstrate the effectiveness of weaving a character's past into the narrative to create emotional depth and a stronger connection with the reader. Another element that left me scratching my head was Vivelle's magical transformation ring. While the concept has potential in The Little Landlady, it felt like a cop-out. This ring essentially granted her the ability to bypass any challenge simply by switching forms, a far cry from the chosen one overcoming adversity we typically see in these narratives. Picture this, a tense negotiation where Vivelle in her child form could have used her accumulated knowledge and wit to gain the upper hand. Instead, the ring allows her to effortlessly switch to adulthood, eliminating the potential for a truly satisfying display of her intellect and resourcefulness. Another significant drawback of The Little Landlady was the pacing. The story frequently dedicated entire chapters to resolving what felt like minor issues. This bogged down the narrative and detracted from exploring the story's initial promise. The chaperone arc exemplifies this issue perfectly. While uncovering a secret plot within high society could have been an intriguing development, the execution fell flat. The story spends an excessive amount of time on Vivelle investigating a seemingly common practice of birth control, something she already knew about from her past life. Furthermore, the explanation that high society women are simply naive strains credulity, especially considering the prevalence of doctors and servants who likely possess this knowledge. This entire arc could have been condensed significantly, freeing up valuable chapters to explore world building or delve deeper into Vivelle's initial objective of rebuilding the kingdom. The slow pacing in The Little Landlady had a domino effect on the entire story. It made the narrative feel sluggish and ultimately detracted from its potential. There was less time to explore the fascinating concept of an architect. As a result, the story we were initially drawn into, the one with the promise of unique world building and a compelling protagonist, ultimately became a forgettable experience lacking originality. The slow pacing made The Little Landlady a frustrating read. It felt like a story constantly on the verge of becoming interesting, but never quite reaching its full potential. So after highlighting the pacing issues and missed potential in The Little Landlady, a crucial question arises. What does any of this have to do with romance? And I did not forget that this is supposed to be a romance, but the author definitely did. This is especially pertinent considering the story's classification as a romance manhwa. There is a male lead in this story, but his presence is so insignificant that it feels like an afterthought. In a true romance manhwa, the relationship between the two leads should be a central driving force, with other plot elements orbiting around it. The Little Landlady falls far short of this expectation. The story spends a significant amount of time on her architectural aspirations, guild establishment, foreign travels, and product development, everything except developing a meaningful connection between the supposed romantic leads. Imagine this instead. Vivelle is reincarnated into the kingdom that had once wronged her. While harboring past grievances, she ultimately decides to rebuild the nation. However, Due to her young age, she spends her formative years learning about the kingdom's decline. During this time, she meets a boy with a passion for carpentry. As they grow, they combine their knowledge to rebuild the kingdom, fostering a deeper connection that blossoms into romance. In this scenario, romance is the central theme, with the architectural plot seamlessly integrated into their shared journey. This approach would have resulted in a far more focused and satisfying narrative. The overwhelming focus on extraneous elements and the relegation of the romance to the background ultimately dilute the impact of the entire story. It feels like the author attempted to create a narrative similar to I Shall Master This Family, but in doing so sacrificed the core elements of a romance manhwa. The defocus on romance was a fatal blow, leaving me completely unsatisfied with the overall narrative direction. A captivating world is also a cornerstone of many fantasy narratives, especially those focused on nation building. Readers expect the story to delve into the challenges and triumphs of rebuilding a society. The Little Landlady initially seemed to follow this path, hinting at a captivating world struggling to rebuild after a tyrannical reign. Elements like the kingdom's economic recovery, the evolving political landscape, and the social ramifications of oppression all seemed ripe for exploration. Imagine the challenges of reviving an economic ravaged by a tyrannical reign. Black markets might flourish, skilled labor could be scarce, and tensions between social classes could rise as resources become scarce. The story could have explored Vavel navigating these complexities, using her architectural skills not just to rebuild structures, but to rebuild a sense of economic stability. For example, in Ascendance of a Bookworm, the protagonist's mind uses her knowledge to revitalize a struggling town. The story delves into the complexities of economic development and social change in a peaceful setting. Mind's efforts involve stimulating local industries, fostering innovation, and improving the quality of life for the townspeople. Unfortunately, The Little Landlady barely scratches the surface of these intriguing ideas. The world building remains shallow, and these potential fascinating elements are relegated to passing mentions without any real exploration. One glaring example is the story's handling of the 70-year gap since the Tyrant King's fall. Vavel, born after this event, encounters a kingdom in disarray. However, the story establishes that the previous generation of architects was eliminated, leaving no skilled professionals. The major plot hole arises here. Why did the kingdom make no attempt to seek outside help for 70 years? It's illogical for a struggling nation to neglect rebuilding efforts for such a significant period. The story attempts to explain this by mentioning destroyed blueprints and lingering fear among the commoners. However, this excuse falls flat. Memories fade and skilled professionals emerge over time. The lack of a more compelling explanation creates a sense of convenience for the plot. It allows Vavel to fill a seemingly preordained role without addressing the kingdom's inaction for so long. A more believable narrative could have explored the kingdom's struggle to rebuild without architects. Perhaps they attempted to train new talent internally or faced political roadblocks that prevented them from seeking external help. The exploration could have added depth and tension to the narrative, making Vavel's arrival even more impactful. The 70-year gap in seeking help for architects is a major plot hole that undermines the story's logic and believability. It prevents the narrative from fully exploring the potential challenges of rebuilding a kingdom and diminishes the impact on Vavel's role. This isolationist approach extends beyond the issue of architects. The introduction of a neighboring kingdom, rich in architecture and supposedly on friendly terms with Vavel's struggling nation, raises intriguing questions. Were they allies who offered no aid after the tyrant's fall? Perhaps they posed a potential threat. Exploring this dynamic could have added a layer of political intrigue and complexity to the narrative. However, The Little Landlady completely ignores this potential storyline. The neighboring kingdom remains a vague entity with no real impact on the main plot. Instead, it's relegated to a subplot involving a second male lead, further highlighting the lack of development for the actual male lead. The story never allows us to connect with the male lead, making the supposed competition from the neighboring prince feel uneventful. In fact, the prince's interactions with Vavel feel more natural. This missed opportunity is emblematic of the story's broader problem. A deeper dive into the neighboring kingdom's relationship with Vavel's nation could have added significant depth and complexity to world building. It might have even provided opportunities for Vavel to utilize her knowledge from past lives in a more meaningful way. The story throws around interesting elements like trade partnerships and political ties, but ultimately abandons them, leaving us with a flat narrative that simply tells us this happened, instead of weaving an intriguing story. This dismissal of the neighboring kingdom's potential weakens the world building and leaves the narrative feeling isolated, lacking the complexities that a world with multiple political players could offer. Having highlighted the story's isolationist approach and wasted world building opportunities, let's turn to a crucial aspect of The Little Landlady, its portrayal of architecture. This story centers around rebuilding a crumbling kingdom, so the confusion between architects and other trades is particularly frustrating. In the real world, architects act as the visionaries and coordinators of a construction project. They design the structures, consider functionality, aesthetics, and safety, then collaborate with skilled tradespeople to bring their visions to life. Carpenters, masons, and construction workers each play a vital role in the building process under the architect's guidance. However, The Little Landlady blurs the lines between these roles. Vivel, our architect's protagonist, frequently takes on tasks typically handled by carpenters or construction workers. For example, early in the story, she secretly builds a new home for her nanny with the help of a carpenter and superior spirits. Through the narrative, she engages in activities that fall outside an architect's typical scope, such as designing furniture and heating blankets. The confusion undermines the true value and expertise of architects. The story portrays architecture as a more hands-on manual field, which is inaccurate. Architects are highly skilled designers and coordinators, not necessarily builders themselves. If the story had focused on the intellectual and design-focused aspects of architecture, it could have explored Vivel's thought process as she tackles complex designs, the challenges she overcomes with each structure, and the impact of her architectural vision on the kingdom's reconstruction. These moments could have been interspersed with other plot points, maintaining a balanced narrative. The confusion between roles in The Little Landlady detracts from the story's potential. It presents an inaccurate portrayal of the profession and misses the opportunity to showcase the true complexities and intellectual demands of architecture, which is what likely drew many readers to the story in the first place. Having addressed the confusion surrounding architects and tradespeople, let's turn to another element with wasted potential: the introduction of spirit summoning in The Little Landlady. This concept initially piqued my curiosity, hinting at a potential magic system or a deeper layer to world building. The concept of summoning spirits opened up a lot of possibilities. How would these spirits function? Would they be helpful companions, or perhaps present challenges for Vivel? Exploring this system could have added a unique element to the story. However, The Little Landlady abruptly abandons the spirit summoning concept after its introduction. The spirits are essentially relegated to one plot point, then become nothing more than floating commentators who rarely contribute meaningfully. Around the halfway point, they inexplicably decide to leave Vivel's side altogether, and their presence is barely mentioned again until the very end. This abrupt shift left many readers, myself included, confused and disappointed. Introducing a magic system and then abandoning it creates confusion and leaves a sense of incompleteness in the narrative. What if the story had delved deeper into the concept of spirit summoning? While it does briefly explain the rules and limitations, it fails to adequately explain why Vivel possesses such a powerful ability until the very end. This lack of explanation makes their presence feel arbitrary, simply because they like her and have nothing better to do. Suddenly, near the conclusion, they are given a different purpose, leaving the reader wondering about their true intentions all along. If their purpose was always to help Vivel, why did they abandon her in the first place? Their departure feels forced and plot-driven rather than a natural consequence to the narrative. As we approach the final chapters of The Little Landlady, a significant shift disrupts the narrative flow. The story introduces the concept of a divine destiny for Vivel, which feels completely out of place with everything established before. The initial charm of the story lay in Vivel's agency and her determination to use her past lives for a specific purpose, becoming an architect. Suddenly introducing a divine destiny feels jarring. It's like the story abruptly changes genre, shifting from a slice of life with reincarnation elements to a full-blown fantasy with a chosen one trope. While there might have been earlier hints of Vivel being destined for something greater, a more compelling narrative could have been built without resorting to this trope. A logical alternative could have been Vivel's role in dismantling a corrupt power structure that actively hinders the kingdom recovery. However, the story abandons the focus on architecture altogether, meandering towards various subplots before this abrupt shift to a divine calling. It's also worth mentioning that religion wasn't a major element until well into the story and only becomes a driving force in the very end. This late introduction adds to the feeling of disjointedness. The shift undermines the story's initial charm. The focus on Vivel's growth and journey as an architect held immense potential for a compelling narrative. The Divine Destiny plot feels like a cheap shortcut that negates the possibility of a more grounded and relatable story. If the story had continued its focus on Vivel's skills and contributions to the kingdom's reconstruction, perhaps she could have faced challenges within the political or social landscape, or maybe she could have encountered difficulties in reviving architectural traditions. This could have provided a more satisfying narrative arc that builds upon the initial premise and resonates with readers. The sudden introduction of a Divine Destiny plot in The Little Landlady is a major disappointment. It disrupts the flow of the story, undermines the potential for a character-driven narrative, and ultimately leaves the reader feeling unsatisfied. Many readers felt a disconnect between the initial premise and the story's conclusion, with some commenting that it started as a story about a girl who wanted to be an architect. Having explored the missed potential for a grounded story about rebuilding, it's worth considering an alternative protagonist, Vivel the Carpenter rather than Vivel the Architect. Think about the state of the kingdom after the tyrant's rule. Infrastructure would likely be in ruins, with basic structures in dire need of repair. The immediate focus would be on practicality and functionality, not grand architectural designs. In this scenario, a skilled carpenter would be an invaluable asset. They would possess the necessary skills to repair existing structures, build basic necessities like shelters and workshops, and even train new generations of craftspeople. While Vivel's architectural expertise holds long-term value, it might not be the most pressing need in the immediate aftermath of a tyranny. A carpenter protagonist could have faced more compelling challenges. They might struggle to find resources, grapple with the limitations of their own skills, or even take on the responsibility of teaching and inspiring the next generation of builders. This could have provided a compelling narrative arc with a strong focus on character growth and overcoming adversity. Interestingly, this scenario would also present a unique opportunity to explore a gender reverse dynamic and a love story. Imagine Vivel the Architect as the female lead and a skilled carpenter as the male lead. Their differing skill sets could complement each other both professionally and personally, creating a more compelling romantic narrative. Finally, we've reached the conclusion of The Little Landlady, a story spanning 100 chapters. While the narrative follows Vivel through childhood, the final 20 chapters feel rushed. We don't witness her natural growth into adulthood. Instead, we encounter a time skip that reveals her as the head of a school she apparently built off screen. This abrupt shift feels forced and inauthentic, particularly in the context of the Divine Destiny plot introduced earlier. A well-executed story about reincarnation would likely showcase Vivel's growth and development gradually. We would witness her experiences from past lives subtly influence her decisions and actions even as a child. This would create a natural progression for her character, rather than an abrupt shift triggered by plot convenience. Vivel's sudden aging creates a disconnect between the character we've grown attached to and the new persona she's forced into. The emotional weight of her experiences as a child is lost, and it feels unearned for her to suddenly possess the knowledge and maturity expected of an adult. Readers are left without the satisfaction of seeing Vivel's journey unfold organically. So yeah, The Little Landlady started strong with a cool premise, but then, well, you just saw what happened. Seriously though, there's so much wasted potential here. Vivel's journey could have been so much more. It makes you wonder what kind of story The Little Landlady could have been. Actually, I'd love to hear your ideas. In the comments, tell me what kind of story you would have liked to see with this concept. Anyway, thanks for watching my review of The Little Landlady. If you enjoyed this, be sure to hit that like button and subscribe for more Manhwa reviews. Let me know in the comments what other stories you'd like me to check out.